Hello, welcome to another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. I'm Wayne Highlander, Director of Sales for Bona Adhesives.
I'm Rob Johnson from the Bona Training.
It's flooding down in Texas.
Ooh, man.
What
is going on? Now, I saw before the show you were rubbing your shoulder there, your throwing arm. Did you pitch last night or what's going on?
No, I don't know what I did with my shoulder. It's killing me. But whatever. So, all right. We're going to do an episode about the weather.
Weather.
I will tell you something, Rob. I know I've said this before about how much we're like farmers. When I didn't get to know my grandfather until I was about 16. No, that's a lie. Till I was about 12 years old, 10 years old, till about 10 or 12 years old. All right. On my dad's side. We traveled so much in the Air Force, we didn't, we just stopped in, boom, we're gone. And that was it. But as I got to know him, he was a retired farmer. He had been a farmer his whole life. He raised tobacco. Okay. And when I got to know him, he was retired. He wasn't farming anymore. And he would take me fishing sometimes out in the country. And as we were driving out in the country, he would always be looking at the crops. And he always goes, God, my God, if it doesn't start raining, them crops are going to burn up in the field, man. I mean, he was like agonizing over it. And then when it started raining, pounding rain, he goes, oh my God, if they don't get them crops out in the barn, he's going to tear up that tobacco. And one day I asked him, I said, Papa, you don't even farm anymore. I mean, what do you care?
Nice.
Yes, I'm eating my ice cream. And
what do you care, you old fool?
Yeah. So, and then I as I got older and I don't do floors anymore, when I'm laying in bed at night and it is just pouring rain, I think to myself, man, you'd be worried about them floors cupping or what have you. We're going through a massive heat wave in the South. And I keep thinking about, man, I wonder if them floors are shrinking and whatever. I don't do floors anymore. But I know now how my grandfather felt. When you do something so long that it's in your blood and it's part of your life that much. I remember when I was a contractor, when it started raining like 6-7 days in a row of flooding, raining, I started thinking, man, what about the 8-inch plank floor we just did? How's that going to be? And you know what I mean? And the humidity comes up and what have you, and the summer changes. And we have gone through some drastic weather changes right now. In there's some severe heat waves and flooding.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a very peculiar year, and I can just tell by the calls that I'm getting from my old sport contractors, my old customers in sport, and homeowner calls. Even guys who have been to training, calls like that, because a lot of guys are dealing with issues that they never had to deal with before, and things aren't working the way that they should work for people. And, I had a call from a guy from Calgary, and, he was just, talking about, the finish is doing this and it's doing that. And, when I started so I kind of brought up what his weather has been, and it was just off the charts, completely different season than they had ever had before.
Wow.
So I said, well, now you're dealing with what they deal with Florida. Okay. Now you're dealing with that. You're dealing with humidity and things like that. And that's going to slow drying down. And he goes, listen, you don't understand Calgary weather.
Yeah.
I said,
yeah.
Look, I don't want to argue with you. Okay. But I am looking at what your weather is. And you have been getting weather that you haven't seen in years. It's usually very dry. Now you're dealing with very wet. And that's the one thing that we're seeing a lot of is people in different climates, when they get thrown a curveball of, it's always dry here, so everybody knows what finish is going to do. Well, Once you start throwing humidity at these people, or vice versa, now everything is just crazy. And there's something wrong with your finish. Of course, that's the one they love. And boy, do they hate when I start talking about weather. But this season has been just here in Albany. I think we've had 3 or 4 heat index warnings.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if we got a heat index warning once or twice a year, once or twice a summer, that would be a lot. And I think
Yeah.
this year we've had, I think we've had at least 4 so far, and we're only halfway through the summer.
Hmm.
So when you hear that, when you hear heat index warning, all bets are off.
Yeah.
I mean, it just really starts throwing a monkey wrench into everything.
Yeah. Have you ever had heat stroke?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, because
A
you
friend
look
of
like
ours
you
had it. A friend, just a heat stroke or a stroke in general. You've been dying to say that, huh?
No,
I
you're
love when you laugh harder at your own jokes.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's funny.
Thanks.
A buddy of ours got heat stroke one time, but that's half of it was because he was, he drank a 24 pack of beer, I think. But
Yeah.
that didn't help. Why have you?
No, every time your screen freezes, I think you had a stroke, and he's finally stroked out. No, no, I've not. But I'll tell you what, these conditions also are awfully tough to work in. So you really got to stay hydrated. And you and I are, neither one of us are big on that. We did health episodes, but you really, really do need to think about that, man. Drink plenty of water and stay hydrated and stuff like that. That's one thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is, and I know a lot of contractors will do this, put in their disclaimers in their contracts about the weather and how it can affect the floor. Wood is hygroscopic, right? It can gain moisture and let go of moisture, and it could swell and shrink and what have you. And I think that some people will even, before winter comes, send out little memos to their clients. Don't be alarmed if sometimes this floor goes through some seasonal movement, because it's natural with wood, and it'll come back. And I've said before, my floors are always nice and tight. How do I? Okay, but they are, except one room in my house, and one room in my house expands and contracts. Well, mostly contracts. I mean, it shrinks a certain time of year. Like, I've never had a floor in my life shrink in any house I've ever owned. California was different than Tennessee. Whatever. When the wintertime, my wife cranks up that's the room that she's in most of the time. She don't like to be cold. And so, man, that floor shrinks in there, and it always bugs me, but it always comes back. And but so I think if I was a client and I wasn't aware I didn't know floors like you and I and our contractors know floors, I might be thinking, oh my God, what's going on? So maybe a little ounce of prevention or whatever, some give me heads up might make a lot of sense.
I'm glad I think I've told the story before, but I'm going to just latch on to what you were saying about the expansion and contraction. And, one of the new things that we've seen in training over the past couple of years it's funny because it's either people want really dark or really light. The warm tones are but even saying that, I've noticed in the past couple schools, people are starting to, like Bum was telling me the other day and he's shocked how many natural jobs he's getting. But let's go back to these jobs that, they have the raw look or the white look. Okay. Like around here where I live, my floors right now, and my house is, I don't know, 70 or 80 years old, tight as a drum. In the winter, we have some really good gaps. Really good gaps. We have lots of gaps, and then some can get, I'm pretty shocked on how big they can get. But years and years ago, Pete and I did a floor, total white job. It's when we used to bleach and use the old white stain, moisture cure on top, the non-yellowing moisture cure. Everything was great. I mean, the job was a home run. And we had a call from her in February. Like, hey, she goes, there's black streaks everywhere. So I'm thinking that's something she's cleaning with. And when I went over there, it wasn't black streaks. Her floor shrunk. Now, her floor was, when we got there, the color of cardboard or even darker. Just an old floor. So you're not going to see, or you're not going to notice expansion joints in that floor, especially when you've been around the house. Like she said, I've been here for 40 years. And I said, oh, Mrs. Plus, that's nothing. That's just natural expansion and contraction. And she said, well, never happened before. It's something you did. And then I was tossed in quicksand. It was like the more I talked, the lower I was sinking. Okay. So have that conversation. I know we've said this before, but you got to have that conversation, because floors, especially now with the expansion and contraction that's going to be happening, because right now everything's going to be tight as a drum. And when these things start to shrink come October, September, when people start turning the heat on, boy, you're going to see some stuff. But that really wasn't what I wanted to touch on. I think what I wanted to touch on was because of the heat index warnings and what that really means. When you get these heat index warnings, that's when you get these really high dew points. And the dew point is what screws us on finishes, especially oil-based finish. Okay? Because if that dew point gets too high, and I'm talking about not dew point outside, but dew point inside. If that dew point gets too high on the inside, you will start to get microscopic water droplets on your floor. Like a can of soda, or, a glass of soda, ice cold soda outside, and all the stuff starts dripping down the edge of the glass. That's kind of what dew happen. That's the same thing that's happening to your floors. And when you get that water on there, I don't know if you've ever, in your old days, pulled a coat of polyurethane, or on a sport floor, pulled a coat of polyurethane, and as you're pulling the urethane, oil-based urethane, it's like it's on ball bearings. It's skidding and pushing and sliding away from you. You can't even hold it on the T-bar sometimes. You ever seen that?
Never happened to me.
Well, of course you.
Well, no, and here's the reason why. Because you had different conditions than I had in California, and also you did big gym floors and stuff. And we didn't do gym floors, and we didn't have the humidity issues that you had back east where you're at. But I know what you're talking about. I know that feeling when it's kind of skipping across the T-bar.
Yeah. It's strange, and right away you want to think, what the hell's wrong with the finish? It's not. One of the times we saw it in we were doing some gyms in Southern Illinois, and everything was going great. We did like a week's worth of gyms, 2 different school systems. Same process, and we're on top of the same finish in each gym. Same process, prep, recoat, pull the finish, everything. I mean, it's just going fantastic. Thursday, we start hearing heat index warning. And then the next day, it was, it was like 90 degrees and 90 humidity. And it was a super heat index warning. We did the same thing, cleaned the gym, abraded it, everything was fine, and then we started pulling the finish in, and that's what we were seeing. I mean, it was, and the 2 guys I had been working with all week were staring at each other like, what the hell is going on here? And never, we knew, hey, and the other thing too was, a couple of gyms didn't have AC, so these places, were just brutal. They were older schools. I mean, it was unbelievable. I have no idea what's going on. I really had no idea what was going on, but I'm thinking, if I don't coat this place, I'm screwed. I'm going to be here forever, you know? So I got this old timer to help us out. He never spoke to me again after this. I said, all right, here's the deal. You're going to buff the floor ahead of us. Okay. We're ready to coat. And all I had him doing was a red pad on the
Okay.
floor and then wiping it with a towel.
Is that to break
And
the
I
surface?
thought, yeah, that's what I thought. That's exactly what
Yeah.
I thought. I'm like, I'll break the surface tension and get this sucker to stick because we had already screened it, but it was just recoats, right?
Yep.
And that's exactly what I thought. And when it started to work, everybody on the crew was looking at me like,
Yeah. How does he do it?
you are,
Yeah.
they're looking at me like I'm Zeus.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling like, and I keep saying that to everybody. Well, you see what I did here was,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you got to break the surface tension.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wasn't really breaking the surface tension. I could have accomplished the same thing if I had that poor old guy just pushing a towel.
Just getting the water off the
Just getting the water off, right?
drying
Just
it, yeah.
drying it off,
Yeah.
That maybe the buffer helped a little bit too, and then hitting it with the towel. Because I was having to hit him with a towel just in case he made any kind of dust or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
From using the red pad, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in the ballpark, but
Yeah. When did you learn that? When did you learn that was actually what you were doing?
I had I think I can't remember who I was talking to. I don't know. I was talking to somebody and I thought I was right, and this guy was saying, yeah, you were halfway there or whatever. He said, but you had a dew point issue. And I'm thinking, had no idea what he was talking about, a dew point issue. Okay. And he said, and that's what was causing that. So you didn't fix your dew point. You just kind of, and he kept mentioning dew point. And then I was remembering there's a section in our training where it's like, it says, know what your dew points are.
Yeah.
And, I was talking to people. I'm like, what do we mean by that? And I didn't really get, so I ended up calling the American Painting Association and talking to a tech guy there. And this guy explained,
You could have always called me.
oh, you knew the dew point thing.
Not a big deal, but go ahead.
I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want to bother you.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, this guy was pretty informative. And he said, sometimes you're driving down the street and all the houses look great that were painted. And then one house, the paint is peeling off like crazy. He said a lot of that has to do with the dew point was bad when they were doing that.
Funny how every craftsman, every industry puts it in their perspective. If you call the bricklayer, he would have said, how you drive down the road and you see all these bricks. All the bricks are perfect, right? But then you see these set of bricks that are just different than the others. It's dew point. You know what I mean?
Well, so he explained to me what. So I go, yeah, but I'm an inside. We're inside people. We do floors inside. We're not exterior painters. And he goes, doesn't matter. And he goes, so he was the one who taught me how to find the dew point inside. And then once you know what your dew point is, now you can really gauge what's going to happen. So you ready? You got a pencil and paper?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So first thing you need is your floor temperature. Okay? You get your floor temperature. Then you get temperature of the room.
with the hygrometer, or you talking about the RH?
RH of the room. Okay. So I remember doing this in a BCC class, and Howard Brickman was there. Now, you want to talk about being nervous when you're an instructor?
Yeah.
Have Professor Howard Brickman sitting in your class. I remember I got a call from Mike Over. He goes, "Hey, Howard's going to be in the class." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't feel good. I don't think we better postpone that class, right?"
Yeah.
So I'm going over my dew point thing, and Howard is just, nodding his head in agreement, and I'm like, "Okay, good. I'm on the right track, So now I'm going to pull up my phone here for people who watch us on YouTube, and I have a dew point calculator app. Okay, there it is. Pretty simple. See it? Okay.
Well, yeah.
So all you have to do is put in the temperature, the relative humidity, the floor temperature, relative humidity, and that will give you your dew point. So if you look here, our temperature was 67, relative humidity 45, gives us a dew point of 45.
Okay, so what is that app again?
It's called
Dew point app?
Yeah, it's just called a dew point calculator.
Okay.
They're free. So now here's the deal. 5 is your number. 5. And that is your dew point needs to be at least 5 points lower than the floor temperature. Okay?
Yep. Yep.
So if your floor temperature is 70 and your dew point is 66, that's a no-go. Okay? That means that you're going to have droplets of water on the floor, or you're going to start to get droplets of water. And then the closer those numbers get, like if you're at 70, now you're going to be, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So one day Bum calls me and he's like, "Hey, I'm 5 points away," because he felt, the job felt creepy, So he did the whole dew point thing, and he goes, I'm 5 points away. What do you think? I'm right there." I said, "You pulling water base?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, that's going to raise your humidity. So you might want to take a precaution, a little airflow, a little bit of heat, dry heat, something just to maybe back that down a little bit."
Yeah.
Anyways,
Good.
when I was showing this to the class, all of a sudden Howard starts shaking his head no, and I'm like, "Oh, what am I saying wrong?"
You said wrong.
Yeah, well, old bleep.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm thinking, oh. So finally I stopped because I just see Howard's face. And I'm like, all right, well, hey, I can admit when I'm wrong. I don't, I'll learn something. You always learn something when you're talking to Howard.
Yep.
I said, "Howard, is everything okay?" He goes, "Yeah, everything's fine." I go with my numbers and all that. He goes, "Oh, yeah. He goes, "I'll be right back." Okay. He goes out to his car. He comes back and he's got a notebook about this thick, right? Like 2 inches thick. And he goes, "This is my dew point calculator." And he starts flipping through, and it's just chart after chart after chart. He never knew that.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, be damned. That's pretty cool.
And he was just looking at me, and we were both having a good chuckle about that. And I said, he goes, "Where'd you find it?" I go, "I have no idea. I really don't." I said, when I was talking to the guy,
I'm
he
going
might
to
have turned me onto it.
I'm going to download it too, because I didn't know there was a dew point calculator. So that's good stuff. It can affect the adhesives as well. And what happens with on the adhesives, when you get dew point, basically you have warm, humid air blowing across a cooler surface, and the water can condense on the slab. So now you can have more moisture on the slab than you think you do. So it can on adhesives also, dew point is a very important. So a lot of people at the time they think, well, I had too much moisture in the slab when it was a dew point issue. So good stuff, Rob. It's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, how much we're affected by weather in our industry. And I was looking up songs about weather, man, and there's as many songs about rain as there is about love. I think there's the crazy amount because I was going to say "Rainy Night in Georgia" is one of my all-time favorite songs, but there's so many of them. It's crazy, man. Anyhow, I'll tell you a weather story. When we were in Kentucky, and then it talks about how violent the weather is, and with tornadoes. I know the movie Twister is coming out. When we were in Kentucky, all right. So I'm in a movie theater, right, with my cousin and my wife and his wife. There's four of us in a movie theater. Movie hasn't started yet. It was that Twister movie from ages ago. I don't know. This must be a recreation that's come out now, right? So the movies,
Yeah, I think this new one's called Twisters.
Oh, okay.
And the first one was Twister with Helen Hunt.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So movie hadn't started yet. We're in there early, right? We're talking. And there's a couple in front of us. And I don't remember what we said, but the guy turned around and he kind of, obviously he was listening to our conversation, no big deal, whatever. And he chimed in about something, whatever. So now that I know that he's listening, I told her, I said, back in 1976, there was tornadoes that went through the Ohio Valley, and there was the worst tornado system that ever went through the Ohio Valley, and it all kinds of homes were destroyed by the tornadoes. In fact, our house was hit as well. This isn't true, but that's what I said. And I said, they always tell you to leave a window open on the east side of the house, and in case there's a tornado, what have you. And I said our mama was living with us at the time, and a tornado hit, and it actually sucked her out of the window. And we found her in a field about 100 yards away, and it was really awful. And so my cousin knows that I'm making this up, so he goes, "Was she okay?" And I said, "Yeah, but the tornado had ripped all the pubic hair off her entire body." And he said she was the coldest she's ever been in her life. And the dude in front of me turned around and he goes, "Okay, man, you just made that up, right?" he was laughing so hard. So anyhow, nice. All right. What else you got about weather?
Well, something that I didn't realize, and when we're teaching people about how to get stuff dry, especially when it's humidity and all that stuff. And I always said that air conditioners don't really count for airflow because, the window type air conditioners
swamp coolers
will take the air that's in that room filled with solvent, spin it around, and then spit it back out. And so you're really just cooling off the solvents, throwing it back down the floor, and things are going to take longer to dry. Like I think I told the story I finally got in our house. I finally got what do they call that? Central air conditioning. We moved into this house over 30 years ago, and I had an old central air unit that never worked. So finally this season, it only took 34 years.
Wow.
We have central air. I'm blown away what it had done to the humidity levels in the house.
Really?
It's insane. And I think that's half of the thing is the air is drier, so it's cooler. I mean, it's cooler. Don't get me wrong, the AC, but I might tell people a different story than I used to about AC because I think central air does something different than the window air conditioners. Because we had the window units but it never lowered the humidity in the house.
Hmm.
This stuff, this one, I'm just blown away by what it does, what the central unit does to the humidity in the house. When's that going to be a big deal? Not so much with water-based products. I mean, actually, a little humidity with the water-based product to a certain extent. A little bit of humidity is good, retards the drying time a little bit, gives us a little more play time. Where oil-based products, it's just going to be the higher the humidity, the longer the dry times are going to be.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's not that I want the, excuse me, air conditioner blasting away while you're coating. That's another whole
Hmm.
bag of tricks. But I am just blown away by how that AC lowers the central AC, lowers the humidity levels, which is really going to be good for drying the oil-based type products.
We work with a very sensitive product when we work with hardwood floors. We talked about they're high
Hygroscopic.
hygroscopic. Oh, wow. What happened there? They're hygroscopic, so they're very much affected by the moisture. Um, we talk about this heat wave that we're experiencing right now. I had a job that we had sanded. It was been acclimated for a long time on the job, and it had been sanded. We're on the last pass of the sanding. Now we're into the fine sanding, and we had the garage open up, and the garage was blowing hot air into the house, like really, really hot, dry air into the house, and it dry cupped that floor. And when we were in that process of the job, when we were pretty much on our final sanding, so it's amazing how much it can affect the floor. I did a job for a lady that we acclimated the job perfectly. We really did. We acclimated it. We did it, and it was only a small kitchen. Did a great job, sanding the floor, whatever was fine. It was just one of those small jobs. It's just nondescript, no big deal. You don't even think about it. It's a kitchen, 165 square feet or something. And then the contractor called me months later and said, "Hey, that lady is really complaining that the floors it's cracks in it or something." I go, "It can't be." And he goes, "Yeah, she's complaining about it." I said, "Yeah, all right, let me go up and look at it." And I went up there, and I'm in her kitchen talking to her, and it is unbelievably hot in that kitchen. Like she had this condition where she was freezing cold all the time. She was a very old lady, and she's like 85 pounds. So when I'm in there talking to her, I'm almost laughing to myself, like nobody acclimates to this. You know what I mean? This is like, no, I never saw that coming. And yeah, we put in our contract, that you gotta acclimate the floors, this, that, and the other. But it was the contractor was a really good customer, but we ended up sanding that floor over down the road. But I mean, yeah, I mean, that tells you also in your contract about how important it is to put stuff about that in your contract. I sent my contract people to probably 200 some odd 250 people on this show that have asked me for my contract. I've sent it to them. So anybody wants it, if you don't have it yet, you can reach out. But it's so important.
I hate to give it up to you, but
Well,
that contract, I love when people will call me or something or text me or whatever. And man, that show is so great. Can you send me Wayne's contract? Can I
yeah,
talk to Wayne? And I was like, yeah, okay, I get it.
I've sent it out so many times it's insane to me, which is great. I hope people can use it, but you have to put something in there about the weather. This is a good example right now. These extremes, and now down there in Houston, where you got the flooding and all those other things that come in afterwards. I mean, now that man is we are responsible for so much anyhow in this industry that you want to make sure you take care of yourself and those type of things, because this heat wave has been going on for many weeks now, and it's all across the east. And someone sent me a picture of Las Vegas the other day. Outside it was 120 degrees. Showed me the thermostat. So all makes a difference to the floors that we work on.
That's crazy. 120. My gosh.
Yeah, but it's a dry heat.
Yeah. If anything, hopefully people just start taking all this into consideration.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
because I mean, so many of us floor guys, we do the same thing over and over and over, and we know. And then this has been a curveball this year. This
mhm.
has definitely been a curveball. So I was talking to one guy down in Texas, and he called me and he showed me these pictures, and he's like, we've never had this. I do the same thing, and I said, do those windows, do they face west? Because there was a wall of windows. And he goes, yeah. He goes, yes, definitely. He said, but I'm not going in till 6, 7 o'clock, so it's not that hot. And I said, well, yeah, it might not be that hot. I said, but that floor is going to be. And he just thought that, oh, typical, right? It's not the product, it's something I'm doing. And boy, did him and I, we got into a really heated discussion, okay? And I'll tell you what, he called me back a couple days later and said, you were right. That floor was hot. Because
Wow.
I said to him finally, I'm like, do me a favor, cover the windows with 3 mil poly and go back and coat it in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay? Go back and coat it in the morning. See how that, see what happens then. And to his testament, he called me back and he goes, I never would have thought. I said, yeah, but this year's been nuts.
Mhm.
The heat, the sun. I said,
Yeah.
that's why I asked if those windows were facing west, because if they were, you were getting, that floor was getting sun, hot sun for 6 or 7 hours. It's not going to cool down
Yeah.
that quick, And he went back, he did. He covered the windows with 3 mil clear poly, went back in the morning, coated it, sent me pictures, and we were both laughing. He goes, well, I guess that's how guys are, right? I go, yeah, hey, you had, I go, it was a lively debate, and we were both laughing about it.
Yeah. Hmm.
But it was definitely, something that he had never seen before. So
Yeah.
the weather is just, and I've had so many calls this summer just with just weird stuff like that. And you look at what's going on with the weather patterns for most of the country too. It's not just one section.
Yeah.
It's crazy everywhere. So
Well, you can get those handheld infrared guns or whatever. You can measure the surface temperature of the floor, and it'll shock you sometimes how much heat can be generated through the window and coming through there, especially in dark stains.
those will cost you about, those thermal thermometers will cost you about $35 at Home Depot or Lowe or
Mhm.
whatever. And to get your dew point, you got to have that,
Yeah.
because that will give you the true temperature of the floor. Because a lot of times the floor temperature is always a little bit different than air temperature. Temperature of the room versus actual temperature of the floor.
Yeah. So on a big parquet job one time, a guy just the floor is shrunk down a line down the middle of the floor, and the homeowners, were loaded for bear. That I don't know what's going on, but my floors have shrunk and whatever. We paid all this money for the floor, and I was there when the guy did the inspection, and he had one of those heat guns with him, and he just measured the rest of the floor, and it was whatever, and then put it there, and it was like wow, like 30 degrees hotter than the rest of the floor. So we went underneath that, and there's supposed to be the heat ducts run through there, and there's supposed to be a shield on top of that to deflect the heat from getting to the floor, and there wasn't. And it really saved that guy from, it wasn't on him, it was on the heating ductwork guys, whatever, they didn't install that properly. But all the way down that one line down the middle of the floor, you saw that area was the only area that shrunk. And when you put the heat gun on it and showed the homeowner, it's like that's a no-brainer. It
Right.
was game over.
Yeah.
So I would have well, anyhow, just
Plus, they're
one
a
more.
lot of fun to play with too.
Yeah. All right, Rob. So I appreciate it. Thanks for the info about the dew point. I'll get that dew point app myself. I didn't know there was an app for that. Seems like there's an app for everything. And again, anybody wants a copy of the contract, just email me, wayne.highlander@bona.com. It's WAYNE.HIGHLANDER@bona.com. And maybe a little something in there, disclaimer about the weather conditions, what have you, because these are brutal now and definitely, can affect the floors.
Good call on that. You're right. That's a really good call, because this is if you're using some oil-based products at this time of year with this kind of weather, you're definitely going to need more time.
Yeah. Yep.
You're definitely going to need more time for proper drying.
There you go. All right, Rob, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We always appreciate it. And this has been another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. Please stay tuned for another episode.